What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey McLary. So tonight is the start of the NHL Draft. Round 1 is on ESPN at 7 p.m. It's about a half hour away. So this mock draft I'm doing is a top 15 mock draft, and then I'll talk about the Bruins, who have the 25th pick. But the top 15 mock is going to be very quick just because I want to get this out before the draft starts. I've tried to watch as much film over the last couple of days, read about as many of the players that I can that are in the top 25 or so prospects. Did as much research as I could. I've been busy with school, though, so I did what I could, though, nevertheless. We'll start out with the first overall pick, the San Jose Sharks, and I have them taking center Macklin Celebrini out of BU. He was great this past season for BU. 32 goals, 32 assists, 64 points in 38 games. A very talented player, a no-brainer pick here at number 1. The reigning Hobie Baker Award winner in college hockey. With all that being said, I do think Ryan Leonard was the best player in college hockey last season, especially when I saw him play in person. Ryan Leonard was the most talented player I've seen playing college hockey for some time. But Celebrini did win the Hobie Baker Award last year, and like I said, he's a very talented player. His skating ability is unmatched. Very impressive stick handler as well, and very good both ways on offense and defense. He does need to get better in faceoffs, but that's not going to stop him from going first overall. They are building a nice core there in San Jose with Celebrini, Will Smith, and also Cam Lund out of Northeastern. A lot of guys there out of the Hockey East. Then at number 2, we have the Chicago Blackhawks taking a center/right wing and Ivan Demidov out of St. Petersburg. He played in the MHL, which is the Russian Junior Hockey League. 23 goals, 37 assists, and 60 points in 30 games this past season. Could have the highest offensive ceiling in the draft, but he's still inexperienced, which is worrisome to some of the scouts. I still have him going this high, though, since Chicago is able to take risks. They're on a rebuilding team right now. They're building around Connor Bedard. They can go for the guy with the highest ceiling possible on offense. He's a very dynamic player who's worth the gamble in my eyes for his scoring ability, so I have him going second overall. At number 3, I have the Anaheim Ducks taking a surprise pick here. I have them taking a right wing, Beckett Seneca out of the OHL. Seneca is a very good player, 27 goals, 41 assists, 68 points in 63 games this past season. Very crafty stick handler, very good speed. He's a great playmaker in the film that I saw. I think he could end up being a major contributor right away in the NHL. Among the players I've watched film on, which I watched film on probably about 20 or 25 prospects, he may be my favorite player in this draft. I think he's the most electric player in this class. And although he could use some work on defense, he has improved in that area. And I'm going to go as far to say that I think he's the best player in this draft. I think he's better than Celebrini. I know a lot of people disagree with me this. Celebrini's a great player. But in the film I saw from Seneca, I think he could step in right away and be an electric force in the NHL. At number 4, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets taking a defenseman, Adam Levshinov out of Michigan State. 9 goals, 26 assists, 35 points in 38 games this past season. A very good skater with speed. Something that Columbus definitely could use more of. Levshinov wants to be a contributor on offense and takes shots from the point. Also can set up guys as well, so I think he could be a good contributor on the power play. He reminds me a little bit of Erik Karlsson to some degree. And with that being said, even though I have Levshinov going as the first defenseman in the draft, I think Zeev Buium's a better defenseman. I have Buium going 5th overall to the Montreal Canadiens. Zeev Buium out of the University of Denver. 11 goals, 39 assists, 50 points in 42 games this past season for the Pioneers. He was a major reason why Denver was able to slow down BC and BU in the Frozen Four tournament. He's a very accurate passer on the offensive end, very skilled player with the puck. He's a good offensive defenseman. With that being said, I think he'd be a good fit in Montreal as well. I think what Jeff Gorton's building there is very strong. I like the direction that the Canadians are going in, and I think if you get Buium, you add his passing ability to that power play and obviously on the defense as well. I think that's definitely going to help their unit. I know they have a lot of left-handed defensemen in their system, but I think if you can get Buium right there at the 5th overall pick, you take him. I think he's the best passer of the defensemen that I've seen in this draft. And I think that's a skill that you need to add to this Canadiens team. At number 6, I have Utah taking a center, and that's Caden Lindstrom out of the WHL. 27 goals, 19 assists, 46 points in 31 games. He's had some injuries that has hurt his draft stock a little bit. He missed 36 games this past season with a back injury. But on film, his offensive firepower definitely stands out, especially off the puck, which makes me think he could be better on the wing rather than as a center in the NHL, but he's a very good skater as well. We'll see how things work out, but I have him going 6th overall. At 7th, I have the Ottawa Senators taking Sam Dickinson, a defenseman out of the OHL. He had 18 goals, 52 assists, 70 points in 68 games this past season. Many scouts are impressed with his IQ on the ice. He knows when to attack and when to chip the puck against the boards, can hit as well, and then obviously 18 goals for a defenseman is very strong. He has a very good shot. I have him going 7th overall to Ottawa, who's now starting to try to figure out their defense and obviously the goaltending situation. They did just trade for Linus Ullmark from the Bruins, so they're starting to try to figure out things on the defensive end. I think adding a defenseman like Sam Dickinson would definitely help their rebuild. At number 8, we have the Seattle Kraken taking Zane Parekh out of the OHL. Another very good offensive defenseman, 33 goals, 63 assists, 96 points in 66 games this past season in the OHL. The OHL has a lot of talent. A lot of draft picks have come from the OHL over the last decade. It's a very good league, and he did very, very well there, 33 goals, as I said. He plays very aggressively, especially on the offensive end. He wants to push the puck a lot. Despite not always having the speed to make a play entering the zone, he always tries, which is something that he'll have to change a little bit in the NHL. You don't want to turn the puck over and then have it be basically a 2-on-1, so he has to be better at that. But he can shoot very well. He's a good playmaker. He's likely to be a power play threat in the NHL. I like him going 8th overall. Then Calgary is the 9th overall pick. I have the Flames taking a left wing, and that is Tej Aginla out of the WHL. 47 goals, 37 assists, 84 points in 64 games this past year. He's the son of Jarome Iginla. This kid can do everything you need on the offensive end, whether it's passing, whether it's shooting, whether it's skating. He's a good skater as well. His defense definitely needs to improve, but he has an excellent shot. I have him going 9th overall. Then at 10th, I have the New Jersey Devils taking a forward, and that's Berkeley Catton out of the WHL. 54 goals, 62 assists, 116 points at 58 games. He's only 5'10", which is probably why I don't see him more as a center in the NHL. I see him more as a winger. But his scoring ability and how quick he is on his feet is definitely impressive. His stick handling is very good too. His hand-eye coordination is elite. Can be an offensive force at the next level. I have him as my 4th best prospect in the draft. I have Seneca as 1, I have Celebrini as 2, I have Demidov as 3, and I have Catton as 4, and Bouillon as my 5th overall prospect. I did as much research as I could over the last couple days. Hockey is so hard to scout with the amount of leagues there are across the world and how talented these players are that are playing overseas that you've never really heard of until you start looking up players and start reading about them. But I did as much as I could over the last couple days, and watching Catton play, I think he is a top 5 prospect in this draft. Then at number 11, I have the San Jose Sharks taking Carter Yakimchuk out of the WHL. He's a defenseman, 6'3", 203 pounds, 30 goals, 41 assists, 71 points in 66 games. A great offensive defenseman, yet again, something that can be hard to find nowadays, but there's a lot of guys in this draft that are very good offensive defensemen. This guy's going to be a power play machine in the NHL, especially when you look at power plays nowadays. It's typically 4 forwards and a defenseman. Being the only defenseman next to 4 forwards, it's basically having 5 forwards to some degree on a power play when you have this guy out there, just like Erik Karlsson to some degree. He loves to shoot. He can hit a ton. Would be a great pick here for the San Jose Sharks, who could use help on the defensive end. Then at number 12, I have the Flyers taking Cole Eiserman out of the U.S. National Team Development Program. He's a very good player, committed to play for BU this upcoming year. 58 goals, 31 assists, 89 points in 57 games. So obviously this kid can light up the stat sheet. His scoring ability is among the best in the class. The issue here, though, with Eiserman's game, and I was reading from a lot of scouts online, they feel as though his weakness is his defense, and that a lot of scouts are concerned with his playmaking ability as well, since it seems like at times he would rather shoot than potentially set up a teammate across the ice. That's something he can work on, though. He's still a very young player. That's something he can work on at BU this upcoming season. Then at number 13, we have the Minnesota Wild taking a right wing, and that's Liam Greentree out of the OHL. 36 goals, 54 assists, 90 points in 64 games. His skating is something that scouts have said is a weakness of his, so he'll have to work on that, especially work on his acceleration. But his playmaking ability is among the best in the class. And when I was watching his film, his stick handling did stand out to me. He had a couple plays against the boards where he was very crafty getting around defenders. So I think his stick handling is definitely something that's a little bit underrated watching him play. He also has a very good shot. Very quick release, so that's something that is a skill of his as well. I think he'd be a very good pick there, going 13th overall to the Wild. Then at number 14, I have the Buffalo Sabres taking Anton Silayev out of the KHL. He's a defenseman, 3 goals, 8 assists, 11 points in 63 games. A very big defenseman, standing at 6'7", 207 pounds. He's a very good skater for a 6'7" player. That's something that a lot of scouts are infatuated with. But I do think he's a little bit overrated when I'm watching him play. That's why I have him going 14th overall, not top 5 like a lot of people do. I think he's getting a little bit overrated. I do think his shot could use a little bit more improvement from what I saw. But his physicality is great. His skating's very good for a 6'7" player. And obviously the Sabres do need help on the defensive end to help out Devin Levi. So this would be a good pick for them. Then at number 15, I have the Red Wings taking Sasha Baver out of the USHL. He's committed to play for North Dakota in college. 36 goals, 32 assists, 68 points in 61 games this past season. A very capable goal scorer at the next level. A very crafty passer. He loves setting up his teammates on film across the ice. That's one thing that's the best part of his game, is probably his passing ability. And that's something the Red Wings could use help with. Every single team could use a guy like Baver who could pass the puck across the ice and set guys up. So that's my top 15 picks in this year's NHL Draft. I didn't really have the time to do a full mock draft and do a full first round, unfortunately, so I only did a top 15. But for the Bruins, they pick at 25th, so I'm going to give you my pick for them at 25. And my pick for them is Cole Bowden, a center out of the OHL who played 67 games this past season, 28 goals, 34 assists, 62 points overall. A very aggressive player. He's very aggressive on the forecheck and a very good two-way center. That's something the Bruins could definitely use help with. He's not afraid to hit at all, plays very smart. And after trading Linus Ullmark, which was the first task that Don Sweeney had to do this offseason, he ended up getting this pick from Ottawa and ended up now being able to use this to try to address a need at the center position, and that's something the Bruins are going to have to do. So I think Bowden would be a great pick for them here at 25. Watching him on film, I see a little bit of Patrice Bergeron in his game. He can play both ways. He's not afraid to hit, plays very smart. That's something the Bruins are lacking, and he's a very young player, a very young prospect. This pick here could be very good for the Bruins at number 25. I know I went through this very, very fast, but we're only about 15 minutes away from the NHL draft. And while I'm breaking down my mock draft, a trade just went down in the NBA between the Atlanta Hawks and the New Orleans Pelicans. We have the New Orleans Pelicans trading for Dejounte Murray, sending Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., 2 first-round picks, one of them being a 2025 first-round pick from the Lakers and a 2027 first-round pick that's least favorable between the Bucks and the Pelicans to the Atlanta Hawks for Dejounte Murray. Dyson Daniels is a very young player. He only played 2 years in the NBA so far. Was a former 8th overall pick back in 2022. Just played in 61 games this past season, averaging 6 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 31% shooting from 3. He is only 21 years old, so a lot of room to grow, and maybe he could do that on Atlanta. Atlanta will also be getting Larry Nance Jr., who only averaged 6 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists this past season for New Orleans. He's now 31 years old, and I'd say his best days in the NBA are probably past him. And if you look at this trade, I think Atlanta could have gotten more for Dejounte Murray. Just 2 first-round picks, Larry Nance Jr. and Dyson Daniels. Obviously, Dyson Daniels is a young player, so that's a big piece of this deal, is Dyson Daniels is still young, only 21 years old, still a lot of room to grow, and obviously they're going to have him for at least a couple more years in Atlanta. But with Dejounte Murray, he averaged 22 points per game this past season, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 36% shooting from 3. Obviously, if you look at that offense, it didn't really work having Trae Young and Dejounte Murray in the same offense, so they had to move on from one of those guys. But I do think you could have gotten maybe 3 or 4 first-round picks from him, maybe 3 firsts, a young player, a role player that's a veteran, and also maybe a pick swap. That's what I would have thought Dejounte Murray would have gone for. Never 2 first-round picks, Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance Jr., which I'm a fan of Dyson Daniels' game. I do think he has a lot more room to grow and maybe can sprout in Atlanta's offense. But if you look at that trade, I think they could have gotten at least 1 more unprotected first-round pick and maybe have gotten a pick swap as well in return. But at the end of the day, it's just 2 first-round picks, Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance Jr. for Dejounte Murray. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that New Orleans didn't have to give Brandon Ingram in this trade. I do think they could potentially trade him this offseason, though. But right now, the way things stand, they have Dejounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas all in the same lineup with a very solid bench as well. I'm a fan of Trey Murphy III. I think he's a very good player, and then obviously Herb Jones as well. So they do have a solid bench. This team obviously is still building, and Brandon Ingram could be a guy they potentially move on from this offseason as well to try to get more players. But they did need a little bit more help on the offensive end at the point guard position, and they end up finding that answer in Dejounte Murray. If you look at what Mikal Bridges went for, 5 first-round picks, and Dejounte Murray only goes for 2. That's a little bit crazy at the end of the day. Dejounte Murray should have went for, let's say, 4. And Mikal Bridges probably should have went for around 3 is what I would have said. But at the end of the day, it depends on team need and what a team's willing to give up. And obviously the Knicks were fine giving up those draft picks to get Mikal Bridges because they felt like he was a perfect fit in their offense and obviously be a very good defensive play next to OG Anunoby. And the same goes here for the Pelicans. They were fine giving up only 2 first-round picks for Dejounte Murray because they probably see that as a steal at the end of the day, like most NBA fans do. We'll see how things work out for the Pelicans. I'll give more thoughts on the NBA draft over the next few days. Anyways, thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.